Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry, and all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we published somewhere around 75 children's books, and we've all taught illustration at university art programs.
That's right. Each week we come at you guys with fantastic illustrator interviews or awesome listener questions, maybe some just like you might have. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but each time you learn something brand spanking new.
Sometimes we tell stories too. Sometimes.
I actually have a question from me. I want to get your guys' feedback on this.
Who's me?
I have a stack of comic books that I want to read. I also have like 5 shows I want to watch. Okay. And sometimes it gets so overwhelming that when I have time to do it, I can't decide what to start on, what to do. So I ended up not doing anything. I end up just like going to Instagram, scrolling through there, or going to YouTube, watching a bunch of videos I don't care about.
Yeah.
So do you guys do that? And if not, like, how do you manage your free time in a way that I hate to like bring productivity into free time, because I'm like, if I got to get work done, I've got systems in place. I've got, I'm super disciplined. I've got, my most important tasks that I have an accountability partner with every day. But when it comes to free time, I don't do any of that because I'm worried I'm going to turn my free time into work, but then I'm not getting anything good out of free time.
I mean, I think you answered your own question. Is you apply the same principles. You're assigning a code to it. Like, if I organize my free time, then it now becomes work.
Right.
That's not true. You have to kind of just plan in the same way, because you remember our quote on the podcast: you can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Yeah.
And so your stress levels go down the second you start saying, okay, on Thursday, I'm going to do this one thing. And it's something I want to do. It doesn't have to be work. It could be anything. Watch a movie, read a book, whatever it's going to be, go on a mountain bike ride. But then, on Thursday, hey, I don't have what causes stress, at least for me, is the 10,000 things you can do, which then becomes paralyzing.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know which one. They're all equally good. They're all fun. You could pick any of them. And then it's there's a weird kind of exhaustion that happens when you have those too many choices. And that is where social media is the most dangerous, because you can just sit down and just start like, hey, I'm just going to look at an Instagram reel, and it's 2 hours later. And because you didn't really know what you're going to do.
It promotes brain damage.
Yes.
And I mean that seriously. Like I am admittedly brain damaged right now from Instagram reels and YouTube reels. My
you see all these? I'm holding up reference pictures they're photographs that I like, that I have said I would like to, in my free time, draw and paint these. I don't consider that work. I just consider it fun. Well, that's exactly what happened to you. It happened to me when I printed them all out on my printer. If you could see, if you go to our YouTube, you can kind of see some of these photos. They're beautiful. And then I would sit down with my sketchbook, and I've got 45 different images, and I don't know which one to do. And I would then just go straight to Instagram. I better check my computer before I do this.
Yeah.
It'd be 2 hours later.
That's the brain damage we're talking about.
So what I did is I went through them, and I said, here's the one I want to do first. And I said, all right, I'm going to do, I put them in order. I didn't necessarily assign them to a day or a time, but I put them in an order. So I know the second that I want to do that, I've got only one option, and it's that photo. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I love that. So it's like, once if you chart out, okay, you've got 20 comics you're going to read, you've got these 5 or 20 graphic novels, you got these 5 TV shows, that you've been dying to watch. Once you chart out, like, if you, over the next 6 months, if you read one of these a week and you watch 5 episodes a week, you'll be able to get through it all. That way, then it tells your brain, yeah, go for it. You can watch that right now because you'll eventually get through them all because you got it scheduled. And instead of thinking, well, if I don't read this one right now, then I won't, I'll miss this one. So I got to read that one. But then there's this other one, I got to do that. I think that is the solution. I think you're right. How do you do it, Will? How do you manage your free time?
I mean, I have like things that I have to get done each day, including exercise. And I'm not as good as I should be on that because I do fall into just kind of scrolling through reels sometimes in free time because like Lily and I will send each other the fun ones,
Yeah.
And there's so much creativity there though. So at the same time, I tell myself maybe it's feeding the creative side of me because people have come up with like these amazing juxtapositions or ideas and stuff. But I don't know. I think it robs in a lot of ways. It robs you from, you have to just ask yourself, what do you want to accomplish? The thing about your life that I look at is you accomplish a lot. If you want to blow off time, I don't think it really matters if it's non-productive. In fact, maybe it's good to have some non-productive time where you kind of just don't, you allow yourself to not, like you said, be structured.
But the problem with that though, is he wants to do these things and it is enjoyable, but it's causing him stress because he doesn't know which one to do. So if you're not, there's certain people that can literally do nothing. And Jake's not one of them. You have to, I'm not one of them either. And so I recognize what he's saying because I am the exact, it's called, what's it called? Free floating anxiety. I think I remember that from my psychology class. Free floating anxiety, that if you're not attached to sort of something that you're doing, it actually ups the anxiety instead of relaxing you.
Right. One of the funnest things I ever did, free time, and this tells you how broken I am in that regard, is during COVID, I was like, I discovered Letterboxd, which is a social network for people who love movies. And what I did was I went through my entire video DVD library, physical media that we actually own. And we have the family library and then we have Jake's library. And I inputted everything that we owned into my library on this thing. So I could, if I was ever out and saw, a movie for $5 at like a used bookstore, I could just double check. Do I have that one already? Oh yeah. Okay. I need that. That fills a gap. That was part of it. The other part of it was for the last 5, 6, 7 years, every time I write a movie, I just write it down on a list, and every book I read, I write it down on a list. And I have like an end of the year list.
Jake.
I know. I have an end of year list of everything I've watched and everything I've read. And so what I went and did was you could do a diary function on Letterboxd, and I plugged in every single movie I'd watched going back for like 5 years and rated them on how much I liked them. And now every time I watch a movie, my first thing is I go to Letterboxd, I read all the reviews, I put my little score on there, and then move on. And it's like, it just makes it so fun. I can't just watch a movie and have it be that. I have to like,
you got to categorize it.
Yeah. And now I'm like, well, I watched 60% of the movie. Does that count as something I can put in on Letterboxd? I'm like, no, it's not 60%, 75%. That counts. Right. And so
we should do a review each week. Cause I think we all three are pretty good, judges of story and stuff. If we're reading books or watching movies, we should do a little Roger Ebert kind of thing.
Well, I'll give you my thumbs up, thumbs down on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which I saw on Friday.
Did you see it? What do you think?
Yeah.
Kingdom of the Planet. That's a movie?
That just reminds me, your birthday's yesterday, wasn't it, Will?
I might have had a birthday yesterday.
Dude, what?
Happy birthday.
I didn't know that.
I was like, oh, I can't forget Will's birthday. And then yesterday came and went. And I didn't say anything.
You know what's funny?
Oh, man.
Anecdotally, not yesterday, but the night before, we
Mhm.
went to bed at like 12:03.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten that my birthday was going to be the next day. I forgot
Yeah.
why I lost track of when it was going to be. I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Mhm.
And I look at my phone to set the alarm and I see that it's the 21st of May.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody remembered my birthday, even my wife. And I started to get upset.
Not even you.
Not even me. Right. Right. I was like, well, wait a minute. If I didn't remember it, if it wasn't important to me, why would it be important to anybody else?
Yeah.
Kind of a thing, you know, but
Yeah.
still, like my wife, she should have known. And I'm like, well, I won't say anything because I don't want to make her feel bad. You know, I did that once with Lori. I forgot her birthday. And I felt horrible. For years, I felt horrible.
Right.
That.
You still feel bad, don't you?
I didn't want her to feel bad. And I knew she would. So I didn't want to bring it up. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute. It's 12:03.
So good.
That is too funny. Well, my birthday was Friday. That's why I went and see Planet of the Apes, Kingdom of the
Dude,
Planet of
happy
the
birthday. I
Apes.
cannot believe
I
don't know
it
your
was your
birthdays.
birthday and I missed
Well,
it.
tell me when my birthday is, though.
Yours is in January. We talked about this on the live stream.
That's not fair because you just learned it. You didn't know it in January.
But the funny thing is I was like, yeah, my birthday's on Friday. We're doing that on the live stream. You guys are like, yeah. And then nothing until today.
I don't want to talk to you during the week because you'll tell me I have to do something.
It's true. It's true. You know what? I need to work on that. I need to text you every once in a while.
Somebody wrangling these cats.
All right. Should we do our first question?
Let's do
for
it
today.
Happy birthday,
Okay.
Will.
Thank you.
All right. So we got a question from somebody that says, what print company does Karen Shipper use? The podcast was awesome, but did she say what printing company she uses? Thanks. Now, I wanted to bring up this question, not to answer it, but to kind of say why, to talk about why many creators, especially people who do production stuff, you know, any sort of printing or manufacturing, anything, sort of keep their printers and their manufacturers close to their chest. And they're not, they're not out there telling everybody, yeah, you should go use this person. And the reason is that is part of the business. The idea that you have for a business, or the idea that you have to, create a line of greeting cards or to make a book or anything like that, that is really the easiest part of everything. It's coming up with the idea. The hard part is, how do you find the printer to work with? How do you source the materials? How do you figure out the shipping situation? How do you find the people to, how do you market to people? All those things. And that right there is the actual business side of being creative. And people work years with different printers, different manufacturers, until they find the right one that really works for the thing that they're doing. And they know that the printers they only have a limited amount of resources or time to work with different people. And they also know that they're in steep competition with every other creator out there. And so a lot of times people just want to say, well, that's sort of proprietary information, and I don't just share that.
I think
freely.
it's lame.
Okay. So tell me why it's lame. Will.
So you could flip that and say, well, if you don't help out your printer with referrals, your printer could go belly up because they're not getting enough work. So that's a flip side. But here's another one. Here's another thing. Yeah. I think that is really true. I think it's less. It should be less true in the artist community, because here's the thing: we're all making our own products, right? Mm-hmm. Our own books, our own games, with our own ideas. Yeah, we're not really competing in the sense that, like, I mean, we're going to find a printer somewhere, and it could be your printer, but where I see that really working is in a project that you just recently did that I don't want to. I talked to the the client that you worked with
Mm-hmm.
that I'm going to be working with as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I know she listens to the podcast. I don't want to bring their company into it, but I feel like in their situation, that makes a lot of sense because
Mm-hmm.
they're hiring the artist,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they have an
Mhm.
idea for a product, and really, like, other people could copy what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
yeah,
beat them to
so,
market.
yeah. So for them, I would totally agree with you and say I
Yeah.
wouldn't want anyone knowing where I was getting that product because it's a specialty print job,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want someone else knowing where I got it because then they could go, maybe I can just hire an artist and now I know where to get it printed, and I just make some phone calls and get some stuff going, even though it's a lot harder than that. But anyway.
Mm-hmm. I had a friend too who he made a list of librarians across the country, and he went library on the internet, did research, found who the librarian was, figured out what their email was, and he made this massive spreadsheet. And it took him days, maybe weeks over time working on it, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, that is so cool. Can I have the list? He's like, no.
Yeah.
He's like, I put way
sense.
too much work into that.
Yeah, that makes sense. He could sell it, but
What if you offered to buy it? You think you'd sell? I mean, what's it worth to you?
Yeah. He would, you know, he would do that. But that same guy also, I was like, he started manufacturing pins, and he's like, I was like, oh, who does your pin manufacturing? He's like, oh, these guys, they're amazing. Here you go. Here's their contact information. Here's the person I talked to. You know, so I agree with you, Will. Like, I think the more competitive the situation you're in, the more likely and the more respectable it is, I think, to keep that proprietary, the information proprietary. But I think you're right. Like, if you need to get something printed, there's 1,000 printers out there,
right?
And might as well give your printer some work.
And again, I'm going to go back to the idea. Like, you're going to do your book, I'm going to do my game. Lee's going to do his cards, and they theoretically could all be printed at the same printer. They're all totally different. We're not competing in the same markets. That's totally different. But yeah, if you have an idea that, yeah.
Well, let me add one thing to that too. Like, you can't give out all your resources, obviously, for the reasons you guys are saying, but there's also the other side of it. I get nervous giving a recommendation. What if I go somebody like say Anthony Wheeler or something asks, hey Lee, who printed your thing? I give them my printer and the project comes out terrible. I don't want to be in the middle of that.
Right. And that's why I don't match up clients with artists very often. I shy away from that because if it's a bad experience, I don't want to have anything to do with.
Right. You do not want to be in the middle of some bad experience, and you never know what's good for you might be horrible for somebody else. And so,
I have people all the time that ask me to illustrate a children's book, and I turn them down. And they're like, "Well, do you know an illustrator that would?" And I'm like, "So one, the biggest red flag there that you just gave me is any illustrator will do that I recommend. You haven't even seen their artwork."
Right.
And so you're totally going about it the wrong way. So now I really don't want to pass you on to someone else because you don't care about the art.
Right.
You
Makes
know?
sense. Yeah.
What about, you have a print negotiator. What's the word? Broker. Yeah. I know you're cautious about who you share that with, that contact information with. Yeah, Will.
Oh yeah. Well, only because she asked. It's expensive for her to do bids, and when she gets a lot of people that are just kicking the tires but not serious, it's
Waste
a lot of work for her. Yeah. So that's the only reason. And she's like, don't send me people, but only when they have their funds in place, either from a Kickstarter or they're self-funded and they're ready to rock and roll. They're choosing a printer. It could be me, it could be somebody else, but they're hiring a printer right now. Send me those people. Yeah.
Now, what would you say is proper etiquette for you trying to find printers and asking different creatives who their printer is. I just want to point out too that this question came into us: what print company does Karen Shipper use? I don't know. That's something you might want to ask Karen herself. We didn't talk about that specifically. And I don't know. She probably is. I don't know if she's open to it or not, but that's a question you need to ask her. So let me ask, what is the proper etiquette? Can you just cold email any creator and say, hey, who do you manufacture with? Or should there be a relationship there first?
I think it could be cold, and then all the worst they can do is say no.
Mm-hmm.
Like people ask me cold all the time, and sometimes that's what I fire back to them. I'm like, do you have your funds in place? Are you ready to print? Email me when you're ready, when you have all these ducks in a row and I have a list. I have a copy paste of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mind sending anybody to my broker for children's books because she can get such a good price. But can you satisfy these requirements? And some people have waited like a month or two, and then they ping me back and they're like, okay, I got everything ready. Can I have her information? Yes, you now can.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Next question.
Let me add one little thing to that. I know we've kind of beat that one down, but there's another version of that I get quite a bit. That is people wanting to, if they know I'm going to be somewhere, or if they're local to my state or whatever, they say, hey, can I take you out to coffee and basically pick your brain, ask you a million questions and get a portfolio review.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that. If you're going to take somebody out, it's fine to offer that. I mean, I think I would do the same thing. I mean, there's no reason not to do it, but think of it as a consultation. Like if you go to a lawyer, you are going to pay. I don't care what you talk about. You could say the weather's nice. You're still going to give them an hour salary. It's going to be like a $200 payment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you should treat somebody who's like a mentor or a business person. Is just already go into it thinking, hey, this information, what somebody who's 15 years ahead of you in the industry offers, they could say one thing that changes literally the course of your career. Mm-hmm. So what is that worth? I mean, it's, in my opinion, $100 an hour for however long you're going to hang out with them and offer that. Hey, let me take 2 hours of your time. I'll give you $200 and I'll buy you lunch. And you stand a lot better of a way than saying, hey, I'll give you a $5 coffee and then tell me everything you've learned in 20 years.
Right. There's a really cool story. Do you know who Jesse Eisler is?
No.
Sounds familiar, but
entrepreneur. He owns a NBA team. He owns a lot of companies. He's kind of like he's kind of like a Mark Cuban too. He's like on social media all the time. He's like really out there and giving advice and stuff. And he told a story the other day where this guy, he flew into another city, and the guy who picked him up at the airport, his limo driver, researched him, right? Like this is so the limo driver was like somebody who wanted to get ahead in life.
Yeah.
Wants to be and is trying to be an entrepreneur and has some ideas that they're working on.
Yeah.
But they're kind of looking for help along the way. So he finds out that he's going to be driving this Jesse Eisler. He researches him, learns everything about him, learns that he's a long distance runner. And the limo driver was too. So he picks him up and he says, hey, I know you're speaking over here in 6 hours, and I know you're a long distance runner. And just starts telling him all this stuff, you know, and I know you probably haven't gotten your run in today and you're probably nervous about how you're going to get your run. I got a circuit over here. We can do blah, blah, blah miles. I'm a runner too. And, I've got water. He had like the gel packs or whatever. Yeah. Like he's got everything ready to go based on this guy's going to say yes.
I know your shoe size. I picked up some shoes for you.
I can't remember if I think he already had his shoes, but then he goes, we can shower over here and we can get you dressed and get you ready to go. And he was blown away. He was like, yes, you know, and so he
got hired on as his assistant.
and now they're working together on his company, on this limo.
That's amazing.
Company. Yeah. So he provided value. He didn't just say, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can I get you a lunch? I mean, the guy's a multimillionaire. He doesn't need lunch.
No.
Right.
No. What everybody, especially multimillionaire, that level of person, they're not worried about money. They're worried about time.
Right.
How can you save me a minute
good
today?
point.
You know?
And he prefaced it. This guy prefaced it with, "You can't buy my time." So Jesse said that when telling the story. He said, "I don't sell my time anymore. I have enough money. I want time with my wife and my kids."
Right.
And so people want meetings all the time. The answer is no. My assistant, there's a standard answer is no. I don't give my time. I'm not selling my time for, you've got this great idea. You've got $50 million. You got $100 million. You want to start this company. No, I'm not. That's how he started it. And so then this guy got a whole couple hours with him for free.
Just because
good.
Yeah.
Well, he's lucky
that's
too
one
that
way
he
about
was
it,
a
or
runner.
or you paid. It just depends on who it is. There's a watercolorist we've talked about on this podcast. His name's Mark Foley. I think he's really, really good. Probably one of the best that I've seen. And I've got questions for him. I didn't email him anything. I signed up for his workshop. I paid him $600.
Yeah.
So I'm taking the workshop,
I don't want to put ourselves in the same boat as, a multi-millionaire. Like, you got to pay for my time, but you do.
I'm just looking for a burrito. I mean, give me a burrito.
A $20 burrito?
$20 burrito.
That's a callback to
nowadays.
No, but I get hit up every once in a while, especially, like you're saying, hey, you're in town for this, can we go to breakfast? Can we go to lunch or something like that? And if my schedule permits it, I'm down to like hang out and talk and pass some information along. But like you said, like, do your homework first. Like, if you're going to ask me something that I've already made a YouTube video about and you haven't watched that YouTube video, or something that I've already talked about 100 times on this podcast, that's like not super respectful for my time. Like, hey, I don't want to do any of my own homework. Will you just do the homework for me? But if it's like, hey, I know you talk about this all the time on your podcast. My situation, here's how it's a little bit different. Could we meet up and talk to you about that? That gives me something like, okay, yeah. Maybe there is something there I can help you with.
Yep.
Okay. This next question is, it's a full story, and I won't, part of me is like, do I do the short version of it and do the long version of it? But I really do want to walk through their backstory here, because this person is doing all the things that we say to do, and they're still coming up short. The subject line is the end.
Can I share the work?
Yeah, you share it while I'll read it. The end of the road or a roadblock, and there's no way back. I do take questions, a little bit of question with, and there's no way back in that subject line. But here we go. I have no idea where I am right now, at the end of the road or at a roadblock, and I don't know how to continue. Also, there's no way back. I'm an author and illustrator, but I can't find an agent to represent me, and I can't get enough followers on any social media so I can generate sales for my self-published books. I really don't know what to do next, and I hope you can give me some advice. Here are the details of my case. I'm 38 years old. I live in Europe. I am a student of yours, and actually all about illustration I've learned from SVS. I've studied something else at the university before deciding to be an illustrator, but my degree is absolutely not helping me find employment in the country where I currently live, so I don't have a job to support me and my family. To resolve my main problem, I did almost everything you suggested in your courses or on the podcast, except some that are not suitable for non-USA based artists. For my social media, I have consistently posted about my art journey since 2017. I did challenges, Inktober, Mermaid, and many, many more smaller ones, as well as challenges of my own. I created 2 children's comic books and posted images of them for months, every day, until the full comic was revealed. I illustrated a whole book live streaming and posted it on social media, and even offered it for free. I also offer free coloring pages for my books. I don't have a newsletter mailing list because I can't make people get my stuff for free, let alone for their email in return. I follow the trends and try to make reels now, though I hate it. My followers on Instagram are under 1,000, a lot under 1,000, even after 6 to 7 years of constantly posting on my profile. I also try to engage with others' posts and comment and like on them. I'm a member of many Facebook groups, and I also am active there. On Facebook, I have 1,000 followers, but they rarely see my posts. About Facebook, via Facebook groups, I've been contacted by authors looking for an illustrator. 99% of them back out when they hear my rates. My rates are as a beginner level artist based on your suggestions, and I cannot go lower because I live in a very expensive country and also because I think that I deserve at least this. I tried finding an agent, slow and painful process. Agents prefer non-simultaneous submissions. So I had to wait for 2 months, sometimes even more, before submitting to another agent. Every agent looks for an art style similar to mine has already rejected me. The other ones are always open only to referral submissions. One agent actually offered to represent me, but under very unfair conditions, so I rejected the offer. On that said, I continue sending submissions to agents with updated portfolio, but still get the same result and have been in this agent circle for 3 years now. Meanwhile, last year, I self-published my personal book projects and will continue doing them, but they generate very little. My social media doesn't help to better the situation. Local reading and promotion in local stores are not possible for many reasons: foreign country and language, remote village life, etc. I constantly work to improve my art and submit it to agents, so I hope that one day someone will say yes. I try to reach more people on social media, but just can't outsmart the algorithm. But I feel stuck and often feel hopeless and discouraged to continue. But the truth is that I don't have another career or job waiting for me. So even if this is the end of the road and not just a roadblock, I can't just turn and go back. I must continue somehow. So please give me advice on what to do next. Thank you in advance. And thanks for listening to that whole thing, but I felt like it really needed context.
It did. Yeah, it did.
There's a bunch here to chew on.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, I think you always start at the work and work
that's
outward.
Right. Mm-hmm. So let's start there.
That's where I differ. I mean, it's a lot of self-analyzation that this artist is doing, which is great. I mean, you should do that. But what she needs, in my opinion, is, and she's looking for honesty here. So I'm not going to just do the back pat easy. The one thing she said, she said she did everything that we say, and she's following the SVS. The number one thing we say is you have to make artwork that invites people to care about it or offers some unique or unexpected view or style, or ideally a combination of both of those things. You're telling a really interesting story that we're not used to seeing it, and you're telling it and you're showing it in a way that we're not used to seeing too. If you did all that stuff, there would be bites. This person is competent in terms of their media control, which is always step one, is do you know how to paint? Can you paint something, a house, some kids all sitting around having a party or whatever? She can do that very well, but the images are boring. I mean, it's like a mouse walking in a field, or, I mean, to me, it's really boring. Yeah. A lizard on a rock. I mean, there's like Will's had the greatest, I think, lecture of all time by when he suggested just say what is in the scene. There's one picture I'm looking at right now. It's a kangaroo hopping. That is not interesting. Nobody is going to find that interesting. I couldn't do a kangaroo hopping and make it interesting. Will can't do it, and Jake can't do it.
There's no story.
There's nothing there. And there's a lot of images where there's a kid sliding down a slide. That's what kids do. Nobody's going to be like, wow, I did not see that coming.
Yeah, the difference. So you got to look at it like this: who makes more money in the housing industry? Is it the person who knows how to swing a hammer and hammer a board together, or is it the person who designs the house? Right. So it's the person that designs the house. Anybody can. So in illustration now, there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of artists who can draw a kangaroo hopping and make it look good. Right.
There's computers that can do that.
Yeah. We can all make the kangaroo hopping. So I'm not going to hire you to draw a kangaroo hopping. I mean, I might if luck, random luck, I happened on your site for some reason instead of someone else's. But I'm going to hire you if you're doing something that is hard for most other artists to do, and that is tell interesting stories. So if you're going to try to compete on just artwork, which is what you're trying to do right now, is competing on just the images looking really well, I'm going to hire oh no, I got the wrong site. I'm going to hire myself. Hold on.
Hire this guy, Will Terry.
I brought the wrong one in. I'm going to hire Jim Madsen or somebody like that, right? Because their artwork is, this is going to sound harsh, it's better in every way than yours, Dima. And
I was going to say, let's take that kangaroo setting and let's just come up with 3 scenarios that would make a good image. I mean, like even that image right there that you're showing right there, Jim Madsen, it's a kid on a park bench. If he was talking to another kid on a park bench, that would be a super boring image and we wouldn't click on it. But instead, this kid is talking to this, like, I don't know if it's like a tribal alien. We haven't seen it before. At least it's something where we're like, what is this relationship here? And so, you take your kangaroo and you put the kangaroo on the moon and now he's got a spacesuit on or something. If it was Jake, you take the kangaroo and put him in an even bigger kangaroo mech suit. And now I'm interested.
A hopping mech.
All right, if it was me, you put him in a hot air balloon and put a cat near him somewhere. And then it's more interesting. But you have to give us something that we don't expect and something.
I'm looking at, viewers. I mean, you guys are so right over and over again. Like there's an illustration here I'm looking at of hers. It's a kid brushing their teeth before bed, right? The kid's got the jammies on. So if I was to tell this story, I'd be like, you guys, this kid was brushing their teeth before bed. Yeah. And the puppy was looking at the duck. Yeah. And the shampoo kind of spilled out on the floor a little bit there. Yeah. And then what? That's it.
Yeah.
Like there's not a story there. There's nothing intriguing there. Unless we keep coming back to this. If there's no story, that art better be so gorgeous. Yeah. And I go to like Itsugi, Tadahiro Itsugi, who basically just does beautiful, really stylized, beautiful women walking through European streets.
It's kind of fashion illustration is how I rate that.
Exactly. Like this stuff would look good as an ad for a fragrance or perfume or something like that, right? There's no story really there, but it's so gosh darn beautiful. The compositions, the color choices, the textures, the stylization of the characters and of the buildings, where you're getting enough visual meat to really just want to be in that image. And so you either have to go hard on that or you have to go hard on story if you don't have the style there.
Yeah. So like the image that we're showing, again, we're on YouTube on School of Visual Storytelling. One of Jim's pictures is this little kid in the outfield, and that's it. There's a really neat backdrop of cars in the background. There's not much story here at all. And if I was Dima, I'd be screaming at us right now going, well, Jim isn't telling interesting stories. It's just, I mean, some of them are just.
I would even disagree with that, Will, though. Go back to that baseball one. So if you said there's a kid in the outfield and he's playing baseball, that's a super boring image. But what has happening here is there's a couple things going on. One, it's a completely not a normal time of day for kids to play baseball. It's at night and there's a city in the background and there's even some people in the background. I don't know if they're part of the story, but the kid is looking straight at the viewer, which is almost making me uncomfortable. Like when somebody stares at the camera, and there's something, the kid is not just waiting for the play to happen. There is something going on with this kid that he's not in just like a baseball position. He is having a moment, and I don't know what the moment is yet, but I'm interested to find out what it is. So he changed the setting and he changed the expectation of what a kid is playing baseball. And so what's the story here? There is a story. He's setting up a story.
And to me, there are those pieces that are they're filler pieces in a story, right? Where you really need the words to understand what's going on.
Right.
And what my point is, don't put those in your portfolio. If you can put in really strong pieces that tell more of the visual story, more of a complete, like with a gag, something that makes you laugh, something that makes you sad, something that makes you angry.
All you need is 20 illustrations.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Dima's
the
got
beautiful
this
part
one
of it.
with-
Really
You know,
good illustrations.
Yeah,
with
she said there's no way back at the end of the road. There's so much road. I mean, I would just toss this entire portfolio for the most part. There's a fox image that I think is really cool. The down view of this fox in the woods kind of looking lost or something. But man, paint skills are there. Drawing skills are there. Color skills are there. All the stuff is there. Now we just need to tell some interesting stories. So go get some good stories. If you don't have to write them yourself. There we go. I want to know what's going on with this little fox. That's a great image, nice color balance. But there is nothing but upside for this person.
Yeah.
I want to point out too, overall, to anybody listening to this, I read that whole backstory where Dima's doing the social media, consistently posting for, 7 years straight, doing the creating books, creating the participating in Facebook groups, all of those things that she outlined. That's the easy stuff. That's the stuff anybody can do who has a pulse. You just show up. Oh, I tap a few buttons. I post my artwork. You just have to be consistent, put it on a to-do list. Check, it's done. The hard stuff is what we're talking about here. Making really compelling, emotionally engaging illustrations. And it's hard and nobody wants to do it because it's so hard. Because there's so much of yourself that you have to put into that. There's so much you have to tap into that's maybe even outside of yourself that you have to put into that. And it requires a lot of sharing this. Why didn't you like this image? Okay, let's go back. Let's fix it. Let's do something better. Let's do something different. Share it. Why don't you like this? Do you like this image? No, I don't like it. It's this, and this. Okay, let's go. That's the hard stuff. And a lot of times people want to skip the hard stuff and do what's seems productive, but it's really the easy stuff.
I was going to say a couple other things. Like I think that, this portfolio reminds me a lot of what happens when you do a Pinterest search for children's books type stuff. And like, if we look at fox stuff, you have like a fox looking at a turtle. You have a single fox here. You have a fox posing, fox sleeping, a little girl reading to foxes and stuff. It's just not that interesting. A fox reading a book.
Yeah.
That if this is, it's funny because like I grew up pre-internet and it was just coming on. I mean, like when I started becoming an illustrator, I got asked to do an illustration for the LA Times on what is email. And I had to ask the art director, and the art director didn't know. The art director's like, I'm going to read you this thing. It's like, when someone types a letter or a message on their computer and then they hit a send button and it appears on someone else's, that was my first year in illustration. Right. And prior to that, like we didn't have a bombardment of images like this. This can't help but influence you, and not always in the good way, because we're all like looking at each other's stuff, and I see it reflected in this portfolio, where it's just two characters interacting or a character playing a guitar. It's easier online to get attention when you're doing a simple image like that, and you can get a lot of likes because people think it's cute and stuff. So you start to think, well, this is what is wanted, but it's not what's wanted by art directors. They want to see you telling stories. They have a story that they need illustrated, and it's got complex human emotions in it, and they need to see that reflected in your portfolio. The other thing I was going to say is, if we were able to somehow gather all the people that are in school to be illustrators, that are out of school trying to become illustrators like Dima, maybe all the level 1 illustrators that are getting a little bit of work here and there, the level 2 illustrators that are getting kind of steady work, the level 3 illustrators that are getting really steady work, and then the level 4s that are getting all the best work, and maybe even the 5s. That if we gathered all those illustrators together and we randomly selected 1,000 of them at random, what percentage would you say are making $50,000 to $100,000 a year?
2%.
2%. Yeah, 2%. And it's no different than when I was in school. It hadn't changed. When I was in school, they said, you guys will be lucky if 3 to 5% of you end up becoming full-time illustrators. There were 20 of us in my illustration class as a junior. I'm the only one who's making a living as an illustrator. That's 5%, right?
Yeah.
So that's never changed. And so my message to Dima is, it's like if you sent a survey to those 1,000 people picked, and you said, hey, are you having a good time in illustration? Most of the responses would be a letter like yours, Dima, right? But there would be there'd be some letters you'd read that are going, best decision of my life. I'm making a great living in illustration. This is amazing, And that's the challenge, is to figure out what they have done to get to that point. And you could do the same thing with inventors, right? People that are trying to invent new new products, new widgets, right? New things. Most inventors don't ever invent anything that takes off and becomes a household product, right?
Right.
Most don't.
Right.
So if you did the same thing with inventors and you said to 1,000 random inventors, what do you think of this? Like, I wasted my whole life on trying to come up with stuff, and it's been fun working on stuff, but I've never really sold anything. Most people are going to be like that. And what's the difference between the ones that have done really well? Maybe there's a little luck involved, that they were in the right place at the right time and they had the right inspiration. But at the same time, they also created something that people couldn't live without, right? Yeah. You have to create illustrations that people cannot live without.
Can you let me share screen?
Yeah.
I'm just going to post this or share this one image here. This is, I think, pretty great. And what I'm looking at here is the character design. This is for the DeviantArt competition 4 years ago that was Radical Racers, I think. And this is a really creative solution to the problem of that prompt, where you come up with a race pilot driver type person, come up with their vehicle, the thing that they race on, what their special trick is, what their lucky charm is, and show an image of them doing the thing. So great character design, beautiful colors, cool idea to have this pig be like this super fast pig be your racer. Really great, design for your lucky charm, this little bunny rabbit with a missing ear. You kind of turn that. A lot of people will do like a rabbit's foot as lucky charm. You do a rabbit missing an ear, which is really clever. I love all of this. Where it falls apart, though, is the image you show of this character doing something. There's no story happening there. There's nothing intriguing about it. It's just the character on the back of the pig, going fast, right? What I would love to see is maybe a 1-point perspective drawing. She's in the foreground, first place, and you have like 2 or 3 other racers behind, and you see something that gives her the advantage to the other racers, right? Or maybe there's one other character right in front and she's about to pass them. That's what we're talking about here. Like, where you're at, this is the kind of work you're doing is something that maybe a a video game company or an animation company needs a concept artist to just come up with some cool designs, a cool design for a kangaroo, a cool design for a character, and they'll pay you for that. They will hire artists to do story moments or visual development for like story. And they'll say, we need to, all these characters we design, just show us what some cool scenes in this video game or this movie would look like, or this TV show would look like, some mood pieces. And that is essentially what illustrators do on the children's book side. Is it's all of that put together. Like, I've got to design a cool character. I've got to put them into an amazing world. I've got to show something compelling or interesting that's happening with them. And so my point of all this is to say, like Lee was saying too, you've got skill, you've got ability, you're just lacking the storytelling. And I think that's really should be the focus for the next year, is let's make some pieces that really tell a compelling story. And if you're not sure where to look at for reference or where to look at for inspiration, go to the Norman Rockwell Saturday Evening Post's covers. Each one of those is a single illustration that tells a very compelling story. Analyze them, look them over, understand them, and then you go make something that does the same sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one thing there too, if you're starting to build a portfolio, and that is one thing that she's done, in my opinion, is just kind of paint towards one version of kids, which is kids like cute things and kids like to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that kids have the absolute full range of emotions, full range of fears, full range of insecurities. And those are more interesting, to be honest, to show that stuff than to show a kid who likes bedtime.
Right.
You know what I mean? So dive into these different emotions that have a little more power.
It's the conflict and the problem. You've got to illustrate interesting problems with interesting solutions.
Yeah.
Boom.
All right. Last question. And this kind of ties into that. This is Brian. He says, self-taught artist not sure what to nervously chew on his pencil over. I like that. He says, I'm struggling to find balance in my studies, trying to learn fundamentals of art, learn from my favorite artists, doing master studies of the work, learning specific techniques like pencil shading, using markers, colored pencils effectively, inking, all this stuff, right? So his question is, if you had 2 hours to make art every day, how would you divide up the time to learn all of the above? Usually have far less time than that, but once a week I could squeeze in a 3 to 4 hour art session. I'm self-taught artist struggling to figure out what I should focus on. The lack of structure is killing me. I've got the perfect answer for this. And we made a thing specifically for you called, we're calling it the Art Bridge now, but it's our fundamentals courses, which are 20 plus courses. I think we're at 22 courses. And they're going to teach you step by step what you need to learn as far as a beginning artist. Like, step one is draw a square. Now turn that square into a cube. Draw a circle. Now turn that circle into a sphere. Those types of things. And we take you all the way to what we were just talking about with Dima. Make a finished illustration that tells story. We teach perspective on the way. We teach light and shadow. We teach color theory. We teach character design and gesture, all those types of things. I think you need to master that sort of stuff first before you try to figure out how to use gouache or watercolor, or, before you figure out the tools. If you can do something really appealing with just a pencil and a piece of paper, me showing you how to do the 5 basic techniques of watercolor, or the basic techniques of acrylic painting, is going to have such a more impact on your work than teaching you how to use those mediums first before teaching you how to make a cool illustration. Lee's been talking about this with location drawing, right? Where it's like, it doesn't matter what tool you're using if you don't make a cool, interesting image in the first place, right? If you have a bad composition. But yeah, what would you guys say for this? Same kind of thing?
Do you know, to me, like if my kid was like, hey, Dad, I want to be an illustrator. You know, I want to follow in your footsteps. I want to be an illustrator. My advice to him, and I with a child, you can, or a teenager, you can, especially if they're your kin, you can really spend a lot of time with them, giving them advice and nurturing them along the way, like kind of like you have with your kids, Jake, right?
Yeah.
Especially with your oldest,
Tate Parker.
Tate, yeah. But what I would say is this: I would say, son or daughter, your chances of making it in a creative world, making a really good living, would be, and I hope you guys disagree with me because I want to hear the other side of this, but I think I'm right. Your chances of making a really good living would be to really work on your ideas, your storytelling, and really go from that side first, and figure out how to tell really good stories and come up with products, ideas that you want to test in the marketplace, that you want to produce, and hire an illustrator to do the artwork for you while you're learning how to do. If you really want to do the artwork, like if there's two people that one's going totally into illustration and one's going into entrepreneurial, like, okay, I want to tell stories and I want to create products, my money's on that guy, because in my experience, the illustrators never ever get there. They get hung up in the creation of the art, and they never make it far enough. And then they say, I just can't get hired. I feel like my artwork's good enough, but I just can't get hired. And I'm like, you're so close. You're so close. You need to go further. You need to start making stuff. And making stuff will actually also get you hired by other people, because the cool things that you're making will be seen, and people will go, who did that? Oh, you did that? Yeah. Oh, would you work with me on my project? It opens doors. But just I think, yeah.
I think the spectrum here of doing art, for like, on one end is, I want to be a hobbyist. This is personal self-fulfillment. I just want to go out and, like, this is my relaxation, too. I want to really be competitive and, like, make a name for myself as an artist in the art world. I think everybody on that spectrum, it all starts with learning these fundamentals, like learning the two parts, right? Learning how to make a pretty image, but also learning how to do a compelling story. And I think like what you're saying, Will, the people who are in that 1%, if there's 20,000 art jobs available in the world, in the art department, or as a children's book artist or something like that, illustrator, is it 20,000? Is it more than that?
Probably more, but anyway,
30,000,
because there's tiers.
Yeah, there's probably 1 million plus people really competitively going after those. You really do have to take your work to a very high level in order to get those jobs. But if you're just wanting to get better as I want to impress my friends. Right. I want to make something. I want to be able to make art that's good enough that I could give it as a gift and people won't throw it away, that they'll actually hang it on their wall. Like, I think that's completely valid too. Path to follow as well, and maybe even a more fulfilling path to follow, because your whole livelihood isn't like hung up into it. But I think it all starts with learning those fundamentals. And I think, to get specifically to this guy's question, if I have 2 hours, I would spend 30 minutes doing specific, like 30 minutes to an hour doing specific, almost like art calisthenics. Like, I'm drawing shapes, I'm drawing gestures, I'm drawing hands, I'm drawing, I'm doing my figure drawing, or I'm doing perspective practice or whatever like that. And then I would spend the rest of the time making a piece of art, making a finished piece of art. And that's how I would probably spend my time if I had 2 hours a day or if I had 5 hours a week or something.
If you're a self-taught artist, the problem that you're going to run into is exactly what this person is running into, which is, what do I do next? And like Jake and I were talking about early in this podcast, is the tendency is to bounce. Oh, now I'm doing a gouache painting. Now I'm learning this perspective exercise. Now it's too all over the place. I would recommend, I mean, not to be self-serving, but to second what Jake is saying, we have built a foundation for people who are studying on their own or as a supplement if you're already in school. That is this step-by-step. Like, we didn't just randomly put the classes in there. We built it like, okay, I don't know anything. What do I do first? And that class is how to draw everything. So all you need is a pencil, really. I mean, just something to draw with. Your media is not important. Then it goes into basic perspective exercises, basic visualization, and then how to add light and shadow to those shapes. And it is, in my opinion, a more enjoyable path, because exactly like what Jake and I were talking about earlier too, is now I know what order I'm going to be doing things in. I can relax. I've got 3 hours. I'm going to do these exercises. And we've talked about the different levels of people doing exercises like this. For the absolute beginner, you literally just follow along with the class. Do the exercise like we're asking you to. Then the next level is an intermediate illustrator, or after that, advanced illustrator, where you're taking the lessons, you do the exercise, you actually do the work. You don't just listen to the video or watch it, while you're doing something else, listen to it while you're doing something else. You actually watch it, and then you actually do the assignment. But if you're advanced or even high level intermediate, you start to change it. Okay, they told me how to tone a singular house scene. Can I apply that same principle to a city scene? Or can I add some difficulty, is kind of where I'm going with that. But anyway, once you get done with the foundation, then you go into specific areas: character design, environment design, and then visual storytelling. And if you do those 4 things, you will be competent to work in any media you want. You will be competent to start telling stories, putting together a good portfolio, and either making art that you just have a lot of fun with if you're a hobbyist, or possibly diving in deeper to career paths. But that's what I would do, because it's too wild. Go to YouTube, pull up art. There's a million exercises you could do. All of them are fine, but which one do you do?
Right.
So that's
you hear, the best artists know how to do hands really well, and all the worst artists hide their hands. So I guess today I got to learn how to do hands, and you spend a week on hands, but what good is it if you can draw a really well done hand if you can't do anything else,
Right.
And
right.
what
It's
do you do
totally
next?
out of
And where does
sequence.
that fit
You
in?
don't know where they're, what an artist they're addressing. And so, whether it's our program or another one, I think just having some kind of order applied to what you're doing, avoid bouncing around, is my recommendation.
Jake, are you allowed to talk about that project that you showed us the other day?
Which one? The describe it in opaque terms.
Well, you display it underneath something.
Oh, I don't think so. Not yet.
Okay. And that, being vague, the reason that I brought what I was talking about up is basically like, they had a killer idea, and we can't talk about it, but it's an amazing idea for a product. And they're using different illustrators to bring it to life.
Right.
And anybody can do that if you come up with a great idea. And they're artists, but they're not using their own art. They're using other people's art. And when you see yourself more as a creator, yes, it is amazing to be able to do the art. Like I wouldn't trade the skills that I have for anything, because if I have an idea, I can dream it up, and I can make the art. I can make the product. I mean, like, let's face it, games, board games or card games, they are the art, right? I mean, like, it's the idea, the game mechanics. Yes, that's a huge part of it. That's an essential part. But the outward facing box and the physical part of it itself is all artwork.
Right.
And so you're so dangerous if you can make the art and you have a great idea for a product.
Right.
That's the ultimate to me.
Right.
And we all want to get there. There's just just know that like I guess my main thing is most illustrators just aren't willing to go that far. They develop their high level art skills, but they don't develop. So it seems so easy, right? Like if this company makes a killing with money wise on what their idea is, you'd say, well, why didn't I? I'm already saying, why didn't I think of that? Right.
Right.
and I'm the artist. I could have done it. You could have done it, Jake. Instead, you're getting hired to do it.
I'll be right back.
Okay. So anyway, we'll turn the time over to Lee now.
Do what they said. Make something.
Uh,
I don't even know why we're talking. I mean, it's sort of a broken record, but that's sort of where the industry is going, is that you're not making money on people just calling you up, asking you to draw something. I mean, really the power is in how you think. Obviously, I mean, it's a common thread, whether it ends up being a product, whether it ends up being a really interesting portfolio. It's how you think. Everyone can learn to draw and paint well, right? I mean, it's not hard to draw and paint well. I know that sounds probably frustrating to people who are right at the beginning of that, because I remember how hard that seemed. It seems like there's a million things you have to learn, but really there's only a couple. Being a good designer is step one. Adding story to that is step two. And then just learning how to control a few basic art tools, whether that's Photoshop or traditional art. It's not that different. And so, I mean, I think too much time is spent in school over technique and all that stuff. It needs to be on those three things, really, like good design, good storytelling, learn a couple of tools.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting. Like, I think it's really important for you guys who want to be illustrators listening to this to understand that markets are constantly changing and shifting. And one of the biggest shifts that I've seen in my lifetime is, Lee, when we were coming along as illustrators, how many board game companies were there? Like 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Yeah, I think there's like 2, maybe
5.
Yeah, I mean, and how many publishers were there to 30 years ago to if you wanted to get a book published?
Yeah, it was small.
And then they all got bought out by 6. There was the big 6, and then Penguin Random House merged, and then there were 5. But at the same time, all these smaller companies are using technology to start small startup companies making games, making books, making graphic novels. Kickstarter comes along. I mean, there are thousands of quote unquote game companies now, right? All from the ones that aren't making any money to the Parker Brothers, right? And what has that done to Parker Brothers? What has that done to, same with children's books, what has that done to the big 5 publishers? It's siphoned away a lot of their market share, right? So now it's harder for them to. It's so noisy out there. It's harder for them to get people's attention on just their products. So there's been more of a challenge in coming up with budgets because because sales are tougher for them as well. That's good news and bad news. I try to look at the good news side of it. The good news side of it is now I can declare myself a game company and make this game that I'm working on right now. And I don't have to sell it to a publisher. And if it does well, I get to keep most of the rewards. And if I sell, 3,000, 5,000 copies, I can make a really good profit on that. A game company can't.
Yeah. I had a friend, illustrator friend, one day we were chatting, he called me up and he's like, Jake, I got to know, is it possible in this business to make $100,000 a year? I just got to know. And I was like, yeah, like, and this is a good artist, really good illustrator, love his style. And I was like, yeah, you should be doing double that with the skill that you have, the ability that you have. And he's like, geez, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm just not getting the jobs. And what what I ended up telling him was, I was like, with this ability and the skill you have now, I would, and the interests that you have and the things that you're able to do, like he's really good at board game design and stuff like that, right? Like I would be reaching out and just really getting your name known in there and get into a bunch of these, do as many of these board game ones, because those tend to are making a lot of money on Kickstarters. But if you really want to take it to the next level, like make your own board game, because you have access to all these people who do board games. You can, and you have the style, you have the art, you can essentially come up with something, play test it with them, get feedback from these people, and make your big game and go into that route. Now, that may not be something that he wants to do, because it does involve a bunch of things that aren't illustrating, right? It does involve a lot of skills that aren't necessarily come naturally to someone who's focused so much of their life on illustration. But I think once you solve the problem of can I make art that is appealing and that looks good? And I know we've really strayed from the original question here, what I do for 2 hours. I got an extra 2 hours. But once, like Lee was saying, once you can make that appealing, then your next step is really to focus on, how do I become a better business person? How do I do the business side of art better? How do I get better at contacting and getting, on the lists of art directors? Do I even want to go into, how do I get into a more entrepreneurial side of things? Do I start, do I teach my skills to other people? Right. And how do I look at those opportunities as well? So, the short of it is, you can make a living doing this thing. It is possible. You have to be, because it's so competitive nowadays, you do have to be smarter on the business side of things, because pretty art just doesn't cut it. We live in a time of so much more opportunity, but also so much more competition, that I feel like you have the same possibility of being successful now as you did 40 years ago in the 80s, when you weren't competing with as many illustrators, but you were competing with, how do I even get access to knowledge? How do I get access to the right people? How do I get access to a creative community of people who foster creativity inside me? That is super easy to get access to nowadays. Now you just have to level up above everybody around you who also has those opportunities.
Boom.
All right.
Wrap it up.
Let's
wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. All right, everybody. 3-Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn, where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts are Lee White, Will Terry, and I'm Jake Parker. You can follow us on our various Instagram accounts if you want. But really, we just want you to come over to SVSLearn, learn how to become a better illustrator, share your work on our forums, get feedback, become part of the community, and
participate in how to fix your art.
Participate in how to fix your art, and go out there and start getting work. That's what we want. That's why we're doing this. Podcast produced by Daniel Tu. That's Daniel TU. Keeper of the curriculum, Austin Shirtliff. Shownotes wrangler, Lily Howell. Chief Operations Officer, Lisa Fott. And our illustrator, Annalise Black. Now, go draw something.
Have you guys ever been arrested?
I have not.
I have had run-ins, but never arrested.
I wonder if we should share that on the podcast. It'd probably be a funny story. I wouldn't care about snow. I mean, it's snowboarding. It's not like I was trying to steal something or something,
My big thing growing up, when I was a teen, late teens, was trying to get on the tops of buildings, roofs, like seeing what was scalable and finding weird ways to get on tops. We were trying to be like the Ninja Turtles or Batman, and just like, okay, you see that building over there? Let's see if we can get on the roof of it. And we were doing that at schools, like at the community college, at hotels, all kinds of stuff. That was our big thing. Never got caught though. Never got caught.
Thank
You
God.
guys know Wayne, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how he's kind of squirrely, my business partner. So he owned a property and he had a tenant that said basically he wasn't paying his rent. And then when he really tried to go over there and talk to the guy was like, but in a nutshell, he basically, have you guys seen the movie Pacific Heights?
No, actually.
Where Michael Keaton is in the basement, like he flashes a bunch of cash and he rents this expensive apartment, and then he's there to like not pay and to drive the landlord crazy, so the landlord will do something illegal. So this guy was doing that. He's like, he finally just said to him, he's like, hey, I'm gonna stay in your house as long as I can without paying you. That's my goal.
Oh man.
Just said it straight to his face. So the guy had a flatbed trailer. So Wayne hooked up to it one day when he wasn't there and just took it to his house and then called him and said, hey, I know you need your flatbed for work. You can have it when you pay me, kind of thing. Right?
Ooh, nice.
So the guy called the cops. The cops called Wayne and they said, hey, the cops can pretend to be your friend, right? They can lie to you and everything. So they're like, hey, heard you got this guy's trailer. Yeah, that's my tenant. He said all this. He said he wasn't going to pay me. Yeah, I understand. We just need you to come into the precinct and fill out some paperwork so we know, where the trailer is and everything.
Ooh.
So Wayne goes in there and they like turn around and they put him in cuffs. So he gets booked into jail. And of course it's a Friday. So he's going to spend the weekend there, right? Before he can see the judge on Monday. So the funny part of the story is he's sitting there in the holding tank with, the usual suspects with the beards and the, just the rough looking characters, right? And they're all silent. And they're all looking at each other. And he goes, and knowing Wayne, he's all, well, this is going to be boring for a whole weekend. So I'm going to introduce myself to you guys and tell you what I'm in for. And then we could just go around the room. So he goes through it all. They're laughing because they all know that he was an idiot for stealing the trailer, Right. Yeah. It's grand theft, and so then he's like, all right, it's your turn, Jose. And the other guys are looking at each other like, are we really going to do this? And they did. And then they became like best friends. And then on his way out, fast forward to the exit scene, Wayne's like, all right, John, now look, no more hitting your girlfriend. You can't do that. Like he's telling each one of them advice. All right, I'll see you guys. And they all respect him. They realized like he really wasn't one of them.
That's so funny. I mean, they probably had a better time in there because of it. They
did. They played games. They had a good time.
I'll give you guys one.
I want to.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, if Wayne ever dies, I want to go to his funeral and just hear all the stories. Because that guy,
he's like a Kramer. He's like Kramer.
It really is. It really is. Anyway,
I had one more little run-in with the law. This one is so good. This is not even that long ago either, so it's like kind of embarrassing. Probably just before Emerson was born, so like 13 years ago. I was at a Atlanta Braves baseball game, and I don't care about baseball. It's bored out of my mind, and so I was drinking with my friend. Of course, that leads to great decision making.
Yeah.
And we're walking out of the game, and there's cop directing traffic, with those like little short lightsabers, like the orange ones, and he's directing traffic. And I was like, take that thing from him. And my friend Brian, he's like, no, you won't. Strangely enough, I'm with the same guy who I got arrested with in Breckenridge. So not a great thing. But he's like, dude, you won't take that. And I was like, yes, I will. But I'm just thinking in my head, I'm just messing with him, of course. And so I start running towards the cop. And then midway, I had no intention of doing that. And midway, I was like, I'm going to grab it. And I don't know. I mean, I'm running and I'm having this little dialogue.
You let the intrusive thoughts win. That's what happened right
And
there.
so I get to him, I grab it, and he's holding on like super tight. I thought it would come right out. And so it was like a momentary like struggle back and forth. I got it. I ran like 5 steps and I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't know what to do. There's no plan at all. I dropped the orange thing and I just was hightailing it. And I managed to hide behind a cart out in the parking lot and didn't get caught.
That is incredible.
So wait,
Wild.
that cop, if he sees you today, he could still grab you. Like
He
it's
could,
not
although
over.
I had a goatee back then. He'd never recognize me.
Never.
Dumb things you do. I mean, there's no win in that scenario. There's no win. I mean,
What?
It started with the first sip.
that's true. That was total liquid courage.
All right, let's get this started.